it how you deem.
Yeah, but
Awesome.
we're on iHeartRadio and Odyssey Radio.
Yeah, we're all over the place.
The office will review it, and then they'll chastise me for anything that I say wrong. And
Good.
Then,
let's do this. Let's get all the secrets. Okay.
Yeah.
Or the dirt.
Yeah.
I don't know how you want to put it. Okay, hold on. Here we go. Stand by for takeoff. Okay.
Even with a musical career and band of his own, our guest, the tall, tattooed Tennessean who toured for 10 years with bluesman Buddy Guy, was asked to join the legendary band Foghat, in which he is the lead vocalist and guitarist. Scott Holt's our guest, and we're going to talk to him on St. Louis in Tune. Welcome to St. Louis in Tune, and thank you for joining us for fresh perspectives on issues and events with experts, community leaders, and everyday people who make a difference in shaping our society and world. I'm Arnold Stricker, along with co-host Mark Langston. Greetings to you this morning, sir.
Howdy.
Good morning to you guys.
That's our guest, Scott. He's anxiously waiting for us to get done with our banter here. Folks, we're glad that you joined us today. We want to thank our sponsor, Better Rate Mortgage, for their support of the show. You can listen to previous shows at stlintune.com, where you can follow us and even leave a review. And our thought to ponder, Scott, because we always do this before the show. It helps us kind of get our focus a little bit on life.
Yeah. Good luck with that.
Well, this one relates to what we're doing today. Music washes away from the soul the dust of everyday life. Music washes away from the soul the dust of everyday life. And Scott, I know that is something that you talk about, that what music is. When you talk about loud is good, you're talking about this spiritual loudness, this intensity. And we want to welcome you, Mark, and I want to welcome you, Scott Holt, to St. Louis in Tune.
Well, thank you for having me. That's an incredibly poetic introduction. I don't know what to do with it.
Well, tell us about this loud is good, that you have this saying, this philosophy of yours. What is, explain that a little bit more than what I did.
I just think that, life, we only get one shot at this. There's no rewind button. There's no do-overs for it. So you're pretty much, we're making it up as we go along. We all are. And your opportunity is to live a life loud. Be out there, tell people you love them and compliment people and brag on them when they do something cool, and tell people about the music you like and the movies you've seen and the food you've eaten, and try to squeeze as much out of this existence as you can, because like I said, we're only getting one shot at it. So,
and the reason we're having you on today is Foghat is going to be performing in St. Charles at the Family Arena on May the 2nd at 7 p.m. It's the 55-year-old, you guys have been around 55 years. It's the Twang and Bang 2026 tour, and I'll give more information about that. But Scott, how did you get started playing guitar? That's kind of an interesting story, when you went from piano to guitar, and then it seemed like it kind of was just kind of hovering around until you met someone very important in your life.
Yeah, I was, no disrespect to my piano teacher, but that was not a happy experiment when my parents insisted on learning how to play piano.
They never are.
Well,
I had a piano
at that point
teacher
in my life, it just wasn't on my radar, Jimi Hendrix when I was 19 for the very first time, and you have to understand, this is before the internet and before the early stages of MTV, so you weren't really, Jimi Hendrix was not getting played a lot in my orbit, and I heard him for the first time. I bought a cassette just on a whim, and it changed my life. He was doing everything that resonated within my body, and it was just the most profound experience I'd ever had. So I rushed home and told my parents I needed a guitar and I wanted to learn how to play it, and God bless them, they made that happen, and I took off. And about a year later, my dad set it up for me to meet Buddy Guy. He was on tour, and we went to one of his shows, and I went to his hotel the next day, and he gave me a guitar lesson, and we stayed in touch and became friends. And about a year after that, he hired me to play in his band, and I spent 10 years on the road with him, traveling the world, and everything just kind of went from there.
Now, that sounds, to the everyday ear, that sounds so simple and so, wow, okay, that's cool. But,
yeah, it's
but,
easy.
but
All you got to do is meet a legend and then go.
meet a legend, and then a year later you're playing in his band for 10 years.
Right.
That doesn't happen by happenstance. You
It
were
doesn't?
you were very
Rare thing.
energetic. And how much did you practice in between those times? You probably had the guitar on your knee and your hand on it 12, 14 hours a day.
To this day, I mean, I play a lot. But when I was starting out, it was a solid 10 to 12 hours a day. I didn't do anything else. I didn't have a girlfriend. I didn't go anywhere. And I just stayed in my room and just, played my guitar until I went to sleep. And when I woke up, there was my guitar, and here we go again. And because it was this beautiful thing that just every day it was unlocking stuff, and I was finding new things. And, all these songs were coming out of my guitar. It was just amazing to me. And the more you practice at it, the better you get. So and then the better you get, the more you want to play. So it was it was the first thing that I found that I genuinely took to and wanted to do, and it gave me happiness, and it still does. If I'm in a bad mood, I can pick up a guitar, and in 5 minutes, I'm completely healed.
Music does that. Kind of like I said at the beginning of the show, it washes away from the soul the dust of everyday life.
Mm-hmm. I can't imagine the calluses you've got on your fingertips. You must.
Well, they're not as bad as they used to be. I mean, because as you get older, life takes over, and you get married, and you have kids, and now the yard's got to be mowed, and the bills have to be paid, and all of a sudden, your guitar's not getting played as much as it used to. But when I'm on the road, it's in my hands all the time, and when I'm at the house, it's right there by the couch, so I've got it close by, but it's just an old friend now.
That's really neat. That's really cool. I think that's pretty cool. Yeah.
What are some of the lessons, the things that you really hold dear to you that you learned from Buddy Guy?
Good source of antibiotics is important. No, I'm kidding. I learned, it's funny because I learned everything from Buddy, literally. I mean, I went on the road with him. I'd never been away from home. I'd never traveled. Our first gig was in Canada. 2 weeks later, we were in Brazil. And so I was learning, how to navigate in a foreign country and how to say please and thank you in a bunch of different languages. Because that's, for anybody that wants to travel, that's the first thing you need to learn is how to say please and thank you. That'll get you a lot when you go to another country, even if you can't speak their language. But he taught me, how to perform on stage, of course, and how to play the guitar. I watched him every night, and we would sit in the dressing room before the show, and I would ask him, how did you do this, or how does John Lee Hooker play this part? And he would show me stuff. But he also taught me how to order in a Chinese restaurant. So I learned that from him,
Wow.
And just to this day, there are things that I do that I don't even know why I do them. And then I'll think about it and go, I learned this from Buddy. That's why I do this. And he's one of my dearest friends. I still talk to him. We don't see as much of each other as we used to. And I really miss the thing I miss the most about Buddy is not necessarily playing in his band. It was the times off stage, when we'd go every day when we were on the road. And that's when I really got to hear the stories and talk to him about, all these blues artists and all the stuff that he'd done. And that's the things that I treasure most.
Wow. A mentor, I would say a major mentor to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow. When did you stop touring or being with Buddy actively?
I left Buddy in, when was it, 2000. I was with him from 1989 until 2000.
That's a pretty good run. That's a good run there.
Yeah. I managed to lay low for 10 years.
And the blues that he does, the jazz stuff, how does that connect to rock?
Well, the thing about blues is in everything. Blues is in the DNA of every American music form that you listen to. You can trace everything back to the blues. and being with Buddy, when I got in the band, I thought, well, I was just listening to only blues. I was a hardcore. All I wanted to listen to was Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf, and that was it. And I got in the band thinking I'm going to be around all these like-minded individuals. Nobody else in the band was listening to the blues because they were playing it. They were listening to Earth, Wind and Fire and Stevie Wonder and African music and all kinds of different, jazz and Miles Davis and John Coltrane. So that was a great education for me because it allowed me to branch out and listen to some other things. But I also was hearing similarities. I mean, you listen to Miles Davis and you can hear the blues in his playing.
Mm-hmm.
You listen to all kinds of music and it comes from the blues. So it's one of the foundations of American music.
So when you stopped working with him, is that when you started like freelancing, what I would say, because I knew you played with B.B. King, you played with Lee Hooker, Otis Rush, Eric Clapton, Carlos Santana, and it goes on and on and on and on.
Unbelievable.
You've appeared on, all the Tonight Show, all the late night shows, et cetera, et cetera. And is that when your band was together or when you were freelancing or what was that?
A lot of that was going on when I was with Buddy, because being with him, I had access to every artist you want to mention. His contemporaries, and his peers. We were always doing shows with him, so I was getting to literally sit at the feet of B.B. King and listen to him and Buddy talk about life, and so I met a lot of those guys through that. After I left Buddy, I put together a band and made 7 records on my own and toured and did that. And it's funny, that's when I was starving. My first 10 years with Buddy was like really crazy successful. And then I spent the next 10 or 15, scuffling, running around the country trying to figure out how to make it work.
Well, what was the name of that band? What was the name of that band?
I just called it Scott.
Oh, okay.
They couldn't fire me if it was named after me.
Yeah.
And it was that was a valuable part of my education too, because being with Buddy, I had the opportunity to sort of live under that umbrella. Mm-hmm. And you walk on a stage with Buddy Guy and you're halfway there. You don't really have to do that much heavy lifting. You put your name on the marquee or on the T-shirt and walk out on stage, and now you've got to convince a room full of people that don't know who you are why they should care. And that's a different challenge. And I had to learn that and learn how to get the audience on my side and that was a valuable part of my education as far as being an entertainer, because you can't just, I don't care how good of a guitar player you are, how good of a musician you are. There's very few musicians that can just walk out there and play and immediately have everybody, drawn in. You got to sell it,
So as part of that, following that up, Scott, how did you do that? How did you draw those audiences to your band's group when you guys were performing and touring around? What did you do?
I just tried to put on the most high energy show I could and make people laugh and make them have a good time, because ultimately, when somebody spends the money to go out and see a show, they want you to succeed. They want it to be fun. They want to enjoy themselves. They're not coming to be convinced necessarily. They're coming to have a good time, and your job is to make them have a good time. So, you do whatever it takes. I've done some, ridiculous things to entertain a crowd. I'm terrible about that. My wife will confirm that for you. I'll do anything to to get some attention. So it's not hard for me to think up something that'll make people go, huh.
Well, that's an interesting point, because I don't think a lot of people think about when they see a band player or a musician play, they think, oh, there's the musician. But you're talking about the fine line between being a musician, a guitarist, a band leader, and an entertainer. And you kind of cross back and forth between both. But the audience, they might just see, well, hey, I went to this concert last night and I saw Scott Holt and his band. Man, it was great,
Right.
If you want to be a great musician, if you want to be a great guitar player, you can sit on your couch and you can practice 14 hours a day and you can be a great guitar player. And if that's what you want to do, then stay on your couch and do that. If you want to be a great entertainer, you got to get an audience and you got to get in front of people. and it helps if you're good at your instrument. You know, that certainly helps. Nobody wants to hear a terrible guitar player, even if he's funny. but you know, you have to work both sides of the coin, and that's, you know, I learned that from Buddy. I mean, Buddy would, you know, he could do more on the guitar with a drumstick than a lot of other guitar players I've seen, and it was magic. You know, watching him, you know, he could smile and it would light up the room, and that's something that you know, I'm still trying to figure out, but that was a lesson to learn from him, is he was just such a riveting entertainer that you couldn't not have a good time watching Buddy play. You still can't, you know.
What an excellent point. This is Arnold Stricker with Mark Langston of St. Louis in Tune. We're talking to Scott Holt. He's a member of Foghat. He is the lead singer and guitarist. They're going to be performing at the Family Arena in St. Charles on Saturday, May 2nd at 7:00 p.m. You can go to Ticketmaster to find more tickets out about that. Also want to give you the Foghat site. It's foghat.com, foghat.com. Scott, how did you get to know Roger Earl and Brian Bassett? You know, we had Brian on a couple of years ago when the band came through town and had a great time with him. How did you guys link together?
I met Roger back in 2014. A mutual friend of ours introduced us, and they were working on a record called Under the Influence. It didn't have a name yet, but they were working on the songs for that record. And so I went down to their studio in Florida and was co-writing some songs with them and helping them put the record together. And we just hit it off. Roger's he's one of my best friends. He's just a beautiful, Brian is too, and Rodney is too. Everybody in this organization's amazing. But Roger and I just really clicked. We both had similar interest in music, and just had a similar attitude in life and art, and we just got along. And we were supposed to write 3 songs for the album. We ended up writing 17.
Wow.
So we put together another band called Earl and the Agitators, and we made a record of that and put that out. So you can get that on the Foghat site too. But then we tried to figure out how to let that band tour in conjunction with Foghat, and then it was like, you know, it was just me and basically it was me replacing the lead singer of Foghat for a set of Earl and the Agitators songs, but the rest of the band was having to play an opening set and the full show after, so that wasn't really working. So we had to shelve that, and I went back down to Florida. We just kept writing stuff, you know, and kept working together and working on new music. And I went down to help them work on their follow-up record. And Charlie Hune, their former lead singer, decided to retire while we were working on the record. So Roger asked me if I wanted to join the band, and I didn't hesitate to say yes, because I love these guys, and getting to play with them is a real gift for me. So we started. I had to learn, you know, the Foghat set, and it was a rough way to go when I started. I think they were a little bit scared that they might have made the wrong choice, but I tried really hard, and they let me, you know, figure it out, and I'm still learning. I've been in the band 5 years now, and I'm still trying to figure it out. But they're gracious, and they let me bump my head and keep going.
Well, why do you say that? You know, I'm kind of curious about that, because, you know, you're obviously not going to be singing any of the songs like they were originally done, or like the previous lead vocalist has done. Was it? I know you bring your own style to the group, which is actually invigorates a little bit. What was the thing that, you know, the struggle that you were just talking about?
Well, you know, when you step into a band with a 50-year history, and you have to be conscious of the fact that there's a historical, you know, legacy component to a situation like this. You know, we're doing songs like Slow Ride and I Just Want to Make Love to You the way Dave and Rod and Roger and Tony Stevens and later on Craig McGregor arranged them. And there's a part where you have to be respectful of that history. And then at the same time, like you were saying, I'm me, so I have to bring my thing into it, but there has to be a balance to that. You know, nobody wants to hear a reggae version of Slow Ride, so you can't get too cute with how you approach the music. But at the same time, I don't pretend to be Dave. I don't want to be Dave. If Dave was still alive, he would be in the band, and I would be happy that he was in the band and still around. But it's you know, it's my responsibility to carry on that legacy, but try to do it in a way that justifies me being in the band. So, and I took that very seriously when they gave me the opportunity. I didn't take it lightly, and I still don't. You know, when we go on stage every night, I remember the fact that I'm standing in for Lonesome Dave Feverett, and my job is to be equal parts me and a respecter of his legacy.
That's a great answer.
Oh yeah,
that is a great answer.
Fantastic.
I would say, Scott, it's a very humble answer, because we hear on other interviews, and you can see on TV where people think they're all that in a bag of chips, and they go, they kind of push the limits, and maybe they end up doing as you would say, a reggae slow ride, just because that's what they want to do, rather than respect the band in its 55 years. Speaking of that, what is it about Foghat that just keeps the fire burning and going?
The music, the catalog of music that they made and are still making, and that's another key thing about this band is if all we did was go on stage and play Slow Ride and play stuff from the catalog, and that's one kind of approach. But we're a band, and we're all active musicians, and Roger is he and I and Brian and Rodney are constantly writing new material and recording new songs. We put out a record 2 years ago that debuted at #1 on the Billboard chart and stayed there for 39 weeks. And we're working on a follow-up to that now.
Wow.
And so we continue to make new music. And so that's an active band. Some of the members of the band have passed on, and that's just a fact of life. But the band remains intact because, we're building off a foundation that they created, and we're still doing it. So.
And the other two guys, besides Roger, outstanding musicians in their own right, and really active in what's going on, and a huge part of making the success of Foghat. Now on this tour, you guys, how does that work out? I know you're going to be in St. Louis, as I mentioned, on May the 2nd, but what's, you get in the bus and go? Do you go by car? Do you go by plane? And how's that story work out?
We usually fly. We'll probably fly in to St. Louis and come to St. Charles for that. Or I don't know what town we'll fly into, but we'll fly in, and we usually come in the day before. And routinely, what we do is we'll fly into town the day before. We all go out to dinner that night and hang out. And if we haven't seen each other in a week or so, we're catching up. What you've been doing and all that stuff. But it's really like a family. And we're glad to see each other. I've been in situations in bands where you get to the hotel and everybody disappears and you don't see them until showtime.
Right.
This band's not like that. We're in each other's pocket all the time. And I get up in the morning and text Rodney, the bass player, and we go get coffee and hang out. And it's just a really, really warm connection that I have with all these guys, and it translates to the stage. When you see us on stage, we're having more fun than the audience, I guarantee you. And that's by design. You don't see four guys up there with their heads down just trying to slug it out and get through this situation so they can get a paycheck and go home. We live for that 2 hours that we're on the stage, and that's when we get maximum joy and maximum happiness, and that's what we're trying to reflect back to the audience.
That is so refreshing.
It is. It's great to hear. Can I ask, at the top of the show, I think Arnold called you the tall tattooed
Tennessean.
Tennessean, yeah. Are you living in Tennessee? Where do you live now?
I'm actually only 5'4", and I've never been to Tennessee in my life, and I don't have any tattoos, so I don't know what he's talking about. No, I live just outside of Nashville and have for a long time, all my life. I was born and raised in Tennessee, and we moved around a little bit when I was a very small child, but once I started going to school, we've lived in Tennessee ever since. I met my wife here. We had our daughter here, and she's grown into an amazing young woman. And this is, I love the world. I love traveling, and I love seeing other places. But I don't think I'll ever seriously think about living anywhere else because I just love this area.
Scott, I was in country music for about 20 years, and I got to tell you, I loved going to Nashville. I don't know. I'm sure you've done a lot of work in Nashville. The musicians and just the whole scene in Nashville is pretty unbelievable. Have you? How much have you plugged into that?
Well, I mean, I've played in Nashville quite a bit through the years because it's right here, and there is a vibrant music scene, and there's sort of two scenes. There's the touristy country scene that the people that come to town for a weekend, they go to Lower Broad and they go to Kid Rock's bar or one of the other country artist bars, and they're hearing that type of music. But there's punk, there's rock, there's all jazz, there's all kinds of music going on in Nashville, and just killer, amazing musicians. Just the only town I think that's probably got better musicians is New Orleans, and they just you can put a band together in 10 minutes. Just get on the phone and you call a couple of people and boom, you've got a band together. So it's if you're a musician, it's a good place to be. Yeah.
I always loved Nashville. Painter's Alley. I don't know if that's even around anymore. Yeah,
it's still there.
I mean,
still there. I've played in there. I played there a bunch of times. A place called Bourbon Street. Which is a cool bar there. And it's a great town. It's a lot different now than it used to be. I've reached an age where I catch myself sounding like an old man. Well, in my day, but it really has changed a lot. I mean, it's these days you can play Count the Cranes because you pull into town and they're building skyscrapers every 5 feet. So condos and apartments and all this stuff. So
doggone it.
That's progress. That's what keeps it alive and vibrant.
So the big, tall, tattooed Tennessean. Okay, I get it.
Right.
Okay.
That's a lot. That's a mouthful right there.
And you're 5'2". Okay, all right.
Yeah. Well, 5'4" in heels.
Okay, good. Boots.
You've given a lot of advice to. My question is going to relate to somebody who's listening, who's maybe 12, teenager years, wanting to get into the scene, I want to do that. I heard this guy play, and you've given a lot of advice in our conversation today. Any more advice you would give to somebody who wants to get into the business and do this professionally?
I would say that if there's anything else that you're interested in, do that. The only reason I would get into the music business is if you absolutely have to. If it's the only thing that satisfies your soul, because the amount of success that you will have in this business is directly correlated to the amount of sacrifice. And most people aren't willing to give up what you have to give up to reach, any modicum of success in this business. I mean, it's truly an unforgiving pathway. You have to give things up. You have to do without some things that a lot of people, wouldn't even consider. And I'm sure that's true of anything. If you really, if you strive for excellence in any field, you're going to have to give something up. But for some reason, the music business seems like it's, you're away from home, you're away from your family. In the early stages, like I was telling you, I was practicing 14 hours a day. I wasn't going to, barbecues with my friends or going to the skating rink or the movies or anything. I was at home playing my guitar. That was a lot of sacrifice. I wasn't, getting girlfriends and doing that stuff. I was playing my guitar, and there's a level of sacrifice that you have to give up stuff. And most people aren't willing to do that, or they think they are until they get into it, and then they go, "Oh, no, I can't do this."
Mm.
So I would say, for a young person, if you have to do this, it's the best job in the world. If you are interested in anything else, do that, because this is not. If this is going to be your plan A and you've got a plan B, do plan B.
That's excellent advice from somebody who's been there. And I appreciate your honesty with that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's I don't want any more guitar players anyway. I don't need the competition.
You don't need that competition.
There you go.
But seriously, it's you know, I mean, it's just a gig that you know you really have to want it, and the reward is in the music. That's the thing. I mean, I've been doing this for over 30 years, and I've been financially successful maybe 4 of those years.
Wow.
So there's been a lot of times when you come home with less money than you went out with. And, you know, there's a lot of times when you're scuffling, and, you know, somebody calls you up and says, hey, can you come play in this guy's backyard for $100? And you say yes, because you want the $100. So there's a lot of that goes on. And, you know, I know a lot of great musicians who have side hustles doing DoorDash and stuff like that. There's no shame in that, because you gotta make your living. You gotta, you know, get your thing on. But it's not a business that will take care of you. You know, you have to nurture it.
Our guest has been Scott.
Man, I'm sounding dark about music.
No, you're no.
We like to get out of the way and let the guests talk, because you've been given some really excellent advice.
I've got one final question for me anyway. You guys did a song called Driving On. I can even play a little bit of it. It sounds a little to me like a ZZ Top LaGrange song.
Well, yeah. Well, and if you follow that thread backwards, you know, you go from ZZ Top backwards, you find John Lee Hooker. And you go back past John Lee Hooker and you find in Slim Harpo and guys like Robert Johnson and Son House. That type of riff has you know, been around probably since Adam and Eve.
Wow.
Know? But it's we got that song from Kim Simmons. He wrote 4 songs for us for that record. And he just had demos of the songs, and of course he passed away before we had a chance to get him to play on it.
Oh.
But we listened to the demo, and then Roger and I sat there and looked at each other, and we said, let's do Slim Harpo and John Lee Hooker. That's what the song needs. And we started messing with it, and that's what we came up with. So yeah, ZZ Top definitely took that idea with LaGrange and had a tremendous hit with it.
Yeah,
but
well, it sounds you guys did.
Timeless, you know?
You did a great job with it. I mean, what you guys turned out with driving on is really good.
Yeah, it's a good driving song.
Yeah, we'll play it here. A little bit yeah, we'll play the whole thing.
Faster.
Yeah. Anyway,
our guest has been Scott Holt he's the lead singer and guitarist for Foghat. Scott, it's been great talking to you. And folks, if you want to see Scott and the rest of the band Saturday, May 2nd, 7 p.m. at the Family Arena in St. Charles, you can go to Ticketmaster for tickets. Scott, you have a great day, sir. We appreciate your time and look forward to seeing you.
Yeah.
Thank you guys very much.
Scott, thanks a bunch. It's been a real pleasure talking with you and spending some time with you. We appreciate it.
Thank y'all, man.
Bye-bye.
Have a good one.
You too.
Oh. He hung up quick. I don't know if we should worry about get me away from those guys.
No, it's great. And folks, the Foghat official website, foghat.com, you can see a couple things that they've got going on there. Mark, they're doing a documentary and they have a book in production. And it's like the story of Foghat is still being written, and you can become a part of it. So they ask, people out there if they have memorabilia, etc., stories and things like that. 55 years.
So I was 15 when they started. That's all I want to say. Wow, it's a long time ago. 55 years, and people are still enjoying it. Young, and people are still getting turned on to it. And just like, yeah, there's something about this.
Great point he made, because we're still writing music and still putting out albums.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's just a rehash of everything that was done, like he was saying. And it's great to hear new music from a band that's been around a while.
Oh, yeah. Foghat.
Wow. Let's listen to this as we kind of go out.
All right.
She'll be waiting for me to pull in. I'll be so happy to let loving begin. Having a way, couldn't get home. Now I'm ready, been too long gone. And I'm driving on, and I gotta be strong, and it won't be long. driving on.
That's all for this hour, folks. We thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, you can listen to additional shows at stlntune.com, where you can follow us and leave a review. I want to thank Bob Berthasell for our theme music, our sponsor, Better Rate Mortgage, our guest, Scott Holt from Foghat, and co-host Mark Langston. We thank you for being a part of our community of curious minds. St. Louis in Tune is a production of Motif Media Group and the U.S. Radio Network. Remember to keep seeking, keep learning, walk worthy, and let your light shine. For St. Louis in Tune, I'm Arnold Stricker.
I can see her standing in my eyes. She'll be waiting for me to come on by. Time is moving, it's getting late. I'm speeding up, no, I can't wait. I'm driving on, and I gotta be strong. It won't be long till I'm driving on. I'm driving on, and I gotta be strong. And it won't be long. I'm driving on.